Martin and Will have joined us today for the very first time at Integrate. To guide us through getting started with SAP OData APIs and demonstrate live integration scenarios using API management. Besides work, Martin has been a passionate blogger and integration advocate in the SAP Dev and Microsoft Tech community. And here is his response to the question about having superpowers. I wish to make every person on this planet walk in the shoes of somebody else, which sounds like a nice idea. Yeah, Will, what is there anything about your superpowers? Anything you can share about your personal interests or hobbies? Well, I'm sure he's going to tell us once he is on stage. Please welcome Martin and Will.
Thank you very much. So, like the intro already said, API management and SAP OData APIs, but in the end it's not limited to SAP, it would be OData in general.
We're also going to show you a little bit more of the tooling that we've put together for the demo as well. So it's not just API management. What we're going to try and do is bring everything that's been shown from some of the other teams and some of the other demos today and bring it all into one kind of more interactive demo. Just to wrap up the day, we know we're the only thing left between pretzels and beer. So unfortunately we did have a slightly late start, so we'll try not to take too long, but let's get underway.
Yep. So why should you care? We have heard the term SAP today already quite often, or maybe it's my bias because I listen for it. But SAP says there's 87% of all global commerce is generated by SAP customers, which amounts to quite a high volume of dollars being generated. So even if that's not correct, we probably can agree it's an integration. It's an interesting integration point.
About 1 cent per every service bus message, I think, from earlier.
True. And the commonality that we have between both companies as well is that we use OData heavily. And we put up here the screenshots from the Oasis Foundation, which is where we both contribute and participate. So we are quite committed there, and we heard GraphQL before, Microsoft Graph as well supports functionalities from OData. So you will find it in all of our ecosystem, including Dynamics 365, in the Azure Table Storage Account API. So there's multiple places where you'll find it. And SAP is also invested in that, with their flagship product. So on the menu for tonight, we brought the Ninja Cat, and alongside with it a nice set of stickers, for everyone who participates in the next phase of our presentation. And as part of that, we'll do a live demo with focus on technical user integration, since all of you will be participating online and on site here. And then we'll look at what Will and I have been working on the past months in terms of OData integration with API management, and then finish that up with another nice live demo from Visual Studio Code.
If only we had an ERP system that was capable of issuing those stickers.
Yeah, so the Ninja Cat is like the unofficial mascot of Microsoft employees. It stands for tackling hard problems and but also having fun at work, and not taking yourself too seriously at times. I personally like this one most, the GIF with the T-Rex. And this one is also quite popular. It's the one that I brought today, including the one that's enlarged there. And since we're in England, maybe you can relate to this one. So now on to the participation part.
Indeed.
The integration will go through Twitter, but we've prepared a website where you have to choose if you're on site or remotely. And from there you have a jump target, so you get pre-filled hashtags and everything, and then you can get started from there. And in the end, you will get either the stickers here physically after the presentation, you can collect them from here, and the download link to my nice Teams background that orchestrates all of this with a nice word globe. And Will, you want to talk about how this works?
Yeah, so with fairly simple architecture for the first demo. Logic app listening using the Twitter connector. So we're listening for a couple of key hashtags. There's a couple of them running. We'll give you those in a second. In fact, we'll actually show you the QR code that will take you to the link through to the pages that you can do. All of what you're going to see is all orchestrated over Logic apps. So we've maybe bent a few rules by using it as a web server as well. Whether we should or shouldn't have done that, I'm not entirely sure, but it certainly works, and it feels like it's in the flow of what we're talking about using our own tooling. Once we've pushed through there, we will have some additional components pushing through APIM. So coming from APIM into over an OData service and then into SAP. Those of you who are listening remotely, we don't want you left out. Obviously, we can't mail you stickers. We can't take people's addresses. But you can see up on the diagram there is an Azure function in play here, and that'll give you a nice exclusive download, which will be watermarked with your Twitter handle. So those of you who are here can get that as well. One ask for the people in the room. You'll get a link back. It will give you the address for the download to go and download the customized one. Please don't all open it right now. The demo gods are evil sometimes, and I think if we have 250 people try and hit a 4 meg download, it's very unlikely our Wi-Fi is going to survive. Yeah, so please open it over a beer, grab them later on, yeah? But grab your phones out and get ready to go.
Yeah, so we see we're not only issuing the stickers, but it's actually going to create the purchase request, yeah, on SAP, and we'll follow up the basket, yeah, through an SAP UI, yeah. In order to be able to do this, we're storing the tweet information on storage, and we'll be following along through the app.
Yeah. So we thought Twitter was interesting just as a kind of demo target. But in the real world flow, what we're really doing is demonstrating the stock issue feature inside SAP and order to basket handling. So any modern e-commerce app will be doing this with SAP as a backend.
Okay, so I'm getting the tweet deck.
If you can't get the QR code, you can go to aka.ms/NinjaCat What's the link, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, aka.ms/NinjaCat We'll take you to a Logic app that's rendering an HTML page. 2 buttons, one I'm present in the room, give me the sticker. The other one, I'm remote, please give me the download. Feel free to grab your phones and go on there now. And at the top, you'll see a simple rendering of what we're seeing in table storage through the integration. It should match more or less what we're seeing. Okay, so Rick's in there already.
Yeah.
Well done, we've got one in. So you got a sticker, so we obviously are also checking stock inside the basket at this point. So there's a limited number of these stickers available, yeah? So you need to get in quickly. So Rick's got one.
And I see activity here
Yep.
on Twitter as well.
And there we go, we can see those kicking off.
Yeah.
So it'll take about, I think we're running a timer of about a minute to come through and actually trigger those issues. So we should see another large batch appear in a moment. There we go, there's another one. So Rick, have you had a response to your tweet wherever you are? This is going to be classic if he's actually not in the room.
There it is.
You got a response to your tweet saying you got a sticker? Yeah, and you should have a link to the download as well. Okay, now we can breathe.
All right. And you see on the left there, that's the actual the app that's looking at the SAP ERP, yeah? And in there, we have the information on the amount that's being issued and the Twitter feeds alongside with them.
Yeah. So we are artificially throttling this in the background, so it will just gradually trickle in, but you'll see these come in. So, okay, hands up who wants to know how you do that. Hands up who wants to just go and get the beer. Presumably, if you're in the room, you're interested in knowing how you would do something like that. So.
All right.
Okay.
So we can leave that up and running. But the difference to what we're showing next is that was about technical integration with a technical user back to SAP. Yeah? And with many of the integration scenarios, that's good for some set of integrations, yeah, like where you have IoT, yeah, or other scenarios where you don't have people involved, yeah. And once you need to maintain the authorizations and have compliance, still be active, yeah. You cannot do with something like this, yeah, with an open integration like this, yeah. You will need actually named users, yeah. And in the Microsoft ecosystem, the identity that we often deal with, that's Azure AD. So let me bring up.
Yeah. So while you do that. So the context behind the technical user is obviously we have this running in the background with a single user who's currently logged in, orchestrating the flow, and any context that we're pushing through the APIs is being called as that individual technical user. So we don't get any of your user context flowing into SAP because nobody in the room's logged in. Yeah. However, in a lot of enterprise scenarios, maybe even B2B or B2C scenarios, having everything running as a single user isn't great. Yeah, so we need some kind of user context, and we need an application that can grab that user from Azure. We're going to use Azure AD in this case. Can grab that user context, and then we want to flow it through into SAP. Now, we talked a lot about this with myself and Martin about how actually the best way to achieve this is in practice. And there are a few different possibilities, but the best way to do this is using a feature called principal propagation, which we'll walk you through in a moment.
Yes. So you saw me log in, yeah, with my Azure AD account here. And what I actually want to point out, let me get my mouse back here.
So this is using a very slightly modified OData client. So simple OData client, yeah, the application is logging in, grabbing a token from Azure AD, appending it, and firing it at an APIM backend here.
Yes, and the product we're interacting with is this nice PF1000, yeah, which is the representation of the sticker, yeah, actually maintained in the system. And from there, we head on into the nice, Will actually like invented that name, the token dance.
It looks something like this.
Because SAP requires us to have a token that is issued by their identity service, and it has to be SAML based. Yeah? So in order for us to make this bridge from our Azure AD identity to the SAP, we have to jump through a couple of hoops. Yeah? And it's all represented by those pillars here. And the OData service where the purchase actually needed to land is on the far right, and the user starts on the far left. So we logged in with our user there, have an interactive flow, and need to get a JOT token from there. And at that stage, we need to translate this now, yeah, from JOT into something that is understandable by the SAP OData server. And for that, we have like a nice flow that's really well described and put up with videos and even more graphs like this, yeah, to make it comprehensible. And finally, once you have this, you can do the OR to SAML bearer assertion, which is quite famous in the SAP space because they always have to do this translation. And finally, have a token that will be accepted by SAP. Yeah? So at this point, you're not done yet. Yeah? So if you want to make a change, yeah, you also need to make sure you can deal with cross-site request forgery. So you still need to retain that token, so you have the SAP token and the CSRF token, and can finally make an update.
Simple, right? Really, really easy. Yeah, nobody ever has a problem doing that at all. So maybe a little on the why, about why we need to jump through all these hoops. So SAP will only accept a SAML token in terms of its OR server. You don't get a SAML token directly if you're using a JOT login. So we need to be able to call in and swap that via Azure AD. Once we do that, we get back a token which has its own life cycle and management and etc. from SAP. Once we've passed those hoops, that's all very well and good, but the CSRF piece, we then need an additional anti-forgery token because we're interacting with SAP as if it's a web server, as if it's a client-side web server. So we need to make an additional call to go and get the head request to go and get the CSRF token. So we don't have SAP thinking that we're forging requests. Now that leads up to quite a big token dance and all these kind of things which are additionally complex. And I think everybody was in agreement that that state of play, that developers have to do that. We can show you samples of what you do in that in a .NET app if you want. We have got them published, but it's painful, to be honest. And we didn't think that was an acceptable state of affairs.
Very often you have more than one client for SAP. Yeah, so let's get rid of all of this madness and get some component in place that can like box all of this complexity in one place and address it for every single client that has access to Azure API management or is authorized through Azure AD. Yeah? And one aspect we didn't mention yet, once you get into this token dance, you always want to also cache it. Yeah? That's one of the major speed ups. Yeah? You saw there's many pings going back and forth. Yeah? You want to avoid this as much as possible. Yeah? And once your token expires, of course, you have to do it again. Yeah? And your caching strategy will be then like crucial. And you will also see a mechanism later on in the presentation how to address that. Yeah?
If you're building a high throughput e-commerce site, you don't want to be hammering SAP for token issuing every single time somebody makes an inbound call. So we're actually caching the translated token here and giving that its own lifetime inside APIM's cache with a caching policy. And we'll come through the technical detail of this in a moment. But.
Yeah. So the core to this is the API management policy that is also like officially published on our policy repo, yeah, on GitHub. So this is really not something custom built, went through many iterations, yeah, with different customers, and it's a good foundation, a good starting point, yeah, to look at this. So now let's see this in action, yeah. So we saw the theory and how this looks.
Quick show of hands in the room. How many people have live debugged an APIM policy in VS Code? Of course. Yeah, so there's a few, but not that many. How many people even knew you could do that? How many people care? Yeah. Good. There's more people care than you could do it. Excellent. That's good news.
So I'm getting myself now a job token.
So again, this application sample is actually published up on GitHub. Both the internal version where we do the token dance in the application, so you can see what it looks like if you want, and the version where we call in and use APIM to just go and say, do this for us.
So I'm doing it this way so you can actually follow along, yeah, on the UI. Usually the app would do this internally, and you wouldn't see this part of the process. Yeah.
There's no better way to illustrate anything API-wise than a Postman demo. So Martin's having to go and grab the token just from the implicit flow, strip it out, so we can add it into the application to do the demonstration in the background. But normally this would all be done inside the app.
Exactly. So I'm jumping now into Visual Studio Code, and I will move it over in a second. There we go.
Testing the scaling capabilities of Martin's screen.
Okay, so this is like the experience of the extension in Visual Studio Code, yeah, which downloaded what I have in the portal. Yeah? So I could also go now to the Azure Portal UI and see the same content there. Yeah? And we're looking at the APIs, and the one we are working with is this one. And we want to show an update. So I'm looking for the patch. You can also see it there, right?
You see it down here, yeah? Do you want me to turn this for you, Simon?
A little.
So you can see there's a fair few calls in this API actually, because it is pretty fully featured. So we're only going to use one or two of these. The first thing you'll see when you start to hit some of these calls is we actually need to enrich some of the service data that comes out of SAP, because the converters from OData to OpenAPI, which we'll talk about in a moment, don't necessarily give you all the data that you're going to need. So there's a couple of conversion tools you can use to grab some of that data and actually enrich some of the metadata so you get a more full experience here. So then you can use standard OData clients to just call straight through APIM, and bam, it will just work.
So I'm putting together now the request.
Visual Studio Code REST client.
Yeah. So we need the Bira token from the other screen. There we go.
So while Martin's doing, is anybody now getting messages back from Twitter saying we're out of stock, you can't have a sticker? Anybody? So we had a limited number. We're obviously not going to hold people to having to order a sticker through Twitter before they leave. But we're not that cruel. I am. You're absolutely right. So the question then was, I'm assuming demand exceeds supply. Yeah. I'm pretty sure if we don't make people tweet for them, it will.
Oh, no, I'll snap up any surplus.
So
Okay.
I added to this patch request for our Ninja Sticker product my Bira token, and we're raising the price from $0 to $1. Yeah. So all of you got the free ones. As of now, it's going to be $1.
Yeah. So you got the limited free issue to start with, and now we're going to charge.
Yes. So I need to scroll up here.
The download's still free.
Yeah. And you see my policy debugging is running, and now I will hit this send request, and we'll be actually jumping into the policy.
Go on, what have we missed?
Or I didn't click. The name must be valid.
You need
Yeah.
a line.
No, I made a syntax error somewhere.
Is it a double carriage return, isn't it, between 7 and 8? Yeah, extra lines in between the header and body.
After line 7.
So
Yeah.
you're saying
Double carriage returns in there.
no, it's not this one.
Yep. So if you put another enter, put another new line in there.
You mean here?
Yeah. It's a double CR, it's the end of headers, I think.
Much better, thank you.
There we go.
All right. So this is the policy that is published officially. Yeah, you can just copy the whole thing, and all of the parameters that are required are named values. We saw that today already. Yeah, in how that looks in Azure APIM management. Yeah, and we explain what those named values are. But right now we want to see the flow. Yeah.
Yeah. So Elizabeth mentioned this policy earlier on, the validate JWT or validate JOT. So this is just going to check that we do in fact have a valid, formed, and correct JOT token coming in from the application.
Yeah. Then we assign the variables to verify the trust, yeah, because we have 3 parties involved: Azure AD, our front-end client app, the API management, and in the end the SAP system. Yeah. So at this point, we're already checking: is there something in the cache?
Yeah.
And there was. Yeah, so we're jumping over to the next section.
So our CSRF policy is only required if we're going to change some data. You don't need to fire the CSRF policy if you're only going to read. We don't care about forge read requests. Not yet. So a quick question from the front was, is that using the auth and token store features in APIM? It isn't. This demo predates those features being available. But you could, in theory, start to use that for the caching pieces. I'm not absolutely certain whether that is going to work for the token exchange with SAP. But it would actually be quite an interesting thing to explore, though.
See that, Will? We have 503 service unavailable. Seems like it's busy, but I will try again. No, it's directly breaking away. All right, then this part was a little risky then. Huh?
As always.
Yeah, but the policy does all the steps that we saw in the diagram before. Yeah, so it solves all the issues that you need to solve, and you can actually see it step by step. Yeah, and we favored this part of the Visual Studio Code extension because you could actually troubleshoot if you have any issues in between. Yeah, the token dance usually goes to a certain extent, and then you hit some configuration that you missed or where you made a typo or anything. Yeah. And this way you can actually see it step by step and see where it breaks. Yeah?
So, question?
Because you brought this part of the extension, how is it getting the debug trace? Is that using the management endpoint, the APIM instance, or is it getting it from somewhere else? The only reason I ask is if my APIM's found to be by private endpoints, does this require from inside the VNet to do this debugging, or can it still do that from outside?
So the management endpoint, if you're inside private VNet, will obviously be restricted anyway. So I don't think you'll be able to do this without being inside that endpoint. We'll check that. I'm not absolutely certain the answer.
Yeah. So since we have a service unavailable, yeah, it's a good point.
So I think we've killed our SAP backend. Is basically what's happened here. So the function, the logic app, the APIM instance is all fine. Yeah. We've killed our backend. So we just killed our ERP server, so we can't issue anything else.
And this is one of the topics we wanted to talk about anyways. One of my colleagues always calls this the Monday morning blues, yeah, when the system was doing stuff over the weekend and there were no employees interacting with it. And then Monday morning, the hit comes when people log in first time again, yeah, after the break.
It's almost like we expected this to happen.
Yeah. And so you have the access token lifetime, which comes into play then. Yeah, let's say it's 36 hours. Yeah, and the refresh token lifetime, yeah, which is the two tokens you deal with for this authorization and authentication topic. Yeah? So that means if they expire in a way that is problematic, yeah, all of them are expired by Monday morning 9 a.m. when people had their coffee and need to interact with SAP again. Yeah? So at that point, you can actually choke your OAuth server, yeah? Depending on how you sized it. Yeah? If you're actually prepared to have all of your employees at one time to deal with this peak, yeah, fine. But the rest of the time, it's not busy then anymore. Yeah? So very often this is an issue then. So how do you deal with this? There were a proposal, I think, from Microsoft Digital, yeah, to come up with backoff delays. Yeah? Randomly take off times, yeah, in API management and the policy. So the token is actually live longer, issued from SAP, but we are making it expire earlier. Yeah? And since we have this randomization, this actually then distributes the need, yeah, for immediate token exchange. Then, yeah.
So the end effect of that is we start to load level out the login surges when everyone comes in on a Monday morning and they've been off for the weekend and all their tokens have expired. So all of a sudden, bam, first thing, there's 4,000 attempted logins and 4,000 attempted token exchanges, and then all of a sudden everything comes crashing down in a big heap. So what we can do by making that delay slightly random, we can start to smooth that demand and peak out over a more extended period of time. What we're actually doing is making the delay shorter because we can't choose to just randomly extend the token further. So we're chopping a piece off the end of the expiry time.
Yeah, and the policy gives you this flexibility. Yeah? It orchestrates the token dance, and you can also do stuff like this, yeah, to get away from operational issues. Yeah? And of course, as a developer, you're looking for ways to get started easily. Yeah. So the API management operations team already took off the burden for the token dance and the things around that. But how do you get started with libraries and scaffolding there? And actually, Will and I prepared a website where we offer you like a converter to get from OData to Open API definitions, but also the SDKs, yeah, for the typical languages. And this is based out of internal projects as well. I think it's Autorest, right?
So we started with AutoRest, didn't we, and eventually used a tool from the MS Graph team called Kyoto.
Correct, yeah. So as that project grows, the capabilities here also grow, yeah. So you convert your service, put it on API management, and also alongside the same lines, you can generate your client SDK and get started from there really easy, yeah. And this is based on an open source project, yeah, the Oasis Foundation you saw on the second slide today, where the SAP and Microsoft contribute, yeah, to that same cause. So this is not custom built by us or anything. It's really just on top of the efforts that both companies are making anyways. Yeah?
Clemens mentioned them in his session as well, briefly.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go through the detail of that particular site. The link is at the bottom, AKMS OData Open API. Buried underneath the left-hand tab are some very detailed enhanced options for some very specific scenarios, which we should probably quickly mention. So one of them is to front it with Power Platform. Yes, you don't necessarily have to build your own application, yeah, but you can bring in the API surface through API management, use the policy to do principal propagation, and hit these from Power Platform. And all the scenarios you're likely to run into when you do those kind of integrations should have checkboxes to enable them in the output for you. So we're post-processing the output here. Brilliant. So if we scroll down, so these are the things we think you're likely to see when you try and do this. And they're the problems that we hit when we did it, and that's how we've worked around them and just published those for you. You can use any other tool. This is open source as well. So this is just an implementation. You can download this. It's just a function app with a static page. You can go and grab those, and if you want to bring it into an API ops pipeline yourself, you can publish that internally and just call out there's a REST API behind this, and this is just a JavaScript spar. Okay.
Trying to find my mouse. Okay, so like I promised, there's all the content that we spoke about today either released on GitHub or on Microsoft Docs. There's also extensive blog series about this topic. Will and I recorded videos on our SAP on Azure YouTube channel, and there's quite some extensive materials around this. Since there's still room for error, yeah, like like we saw today, yeah, to make it work.
Yeah. So if you want to go grab the policy itself, that's the bottom link that we can see here. So up in the API management snippets library is the published version of the principal propagation policy that will do all of what we've just described. So only thing standing between you, pretzels, beer, rest, afternoon and home is, what, 5 minutes of Q&A, probably?
Q&A, yeah.
And some stickers. Any questions? Is everyone still awake?
Lex having the microphone there.
Okay, there we go. We have a question over there?
Is it on? Yeah. If the similar thing has to be done, similar dance has to be done between another identity provider, for example, GCP, and can we request a policy from Microsoft, or there's some guidelines? How can we do ourselves, build a custom policy? It may not be OData, but it could be just a access token and chart token. So do you have some recommendations there?
Well, the concept is not specific, yeah, to us. Yeah? It's just our the knowledge that we have within Microsoft, yeah, for SAP, yeah, that we can put some stuff like this together. But of course, you can reverse engineer the free or the token dance and apply it with other approaches, yeah, like you mentioned.
So you mean you can use the same SDK and build our own?
Well, the SDK for the client, yes, but what I mentioned is the policy to orchestrate the login, yeah, to SAP OData Server.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the mechanics of what are in that policy are specific to the token dance as we described for SAP, but it's by no means exclusive that that's the only thing you could do, right? What you've got in, basically it's using the request policies, caching within an APIM environment to just say, grab this from over here, grab this from over here, take this part out, cache it. Yeah? If it's not there, go fetch this from over here. And it's just orchestrating that request flow. You can do that with any request flow. Yeah, the extent that you could go to if you needed to would depend on what that identity provider was.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
if it's an OData endpoint, of course, with the website that we showed you, you can generate this for any OData endpoint.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
We haven't had a question from this side of the room yet, have we? One over there, brilliant.
I have a small question about OData. I thought that OData was more than just the authentication and more about the format itself. Are there any websites or blog posts about that? How you can do, what traps there are, and what not to do and what to do?
Well, we made the assumption that OData is known today. Yeah. So the focus was more about what's the value in orchestrating this through API management. But of course, there's like extensive tutorials. And is it specific to SAP there, or just any? Yeah. Well, SAP has a recent new blog series on this with Refresh. I can share them. Maybe see me afterwards, and then can send it there. And as well as Open SAP courses. Yeah. Maybe you know them. They're also quite good on this. Yeah.
To extend the answer a little further in that context, so the specific challenge that we were hitting with SAP really was around that propagation piece. So the first demo we did obviously was a technical user. You don't need that policy for principal propagation to do the first Twitter piece because that's running as a technical user. To do the second piece where we're flowing the identity through from the site into SAP, that's where you need the principal propagation piece, and that's quite complex. There are some gotchas, which why we mention those drop-down options. And out the box, you don't get a open API definition to import into APIM from SAP. You get the OData metadata endpoint. Yeah? So that conversion tool we just showed you will do that conversion. It will output you an open API definition that in theory you can bring into anything. But the most logical place for you to bring it into, given the scenario we're describing, is into APIM with that policy. And then, bam, it's just done. Any more? Got about 2 or 3 minutes before the bar opens, so we have got time if people want to ask another question.
Well, 15 minutes, Bill. Anytime. Any questions? You can take.
Going once? Going twice? Oh, one at the front.
How long before the demo was updated to talk about NFTs?
Do you want to just share that question again?
How long before we can expect the demo to be updated to include NinjaCat NFTs?
So we'd be lying if we said we hadn't considered it.
Well, actually, it's already there. Yeah.
Go for it.
They'll do it during the drinks.
I can show you if you're interested. Yeah.
You're going to wish you hadn't asked now.
Yeah, so everything that we do around Microsoft and SAP integration, yeah, we host on this website. And in here, there's an own section, NFTs and swag. Yeah, yeah. And then there you go, corporate NinjaCat.
Now, just to be clear, there's an even rarer form, which is the ones you'll be getting, which are watermarked with your tweets today. So anybody tweets it, we'll leave it open. If you want a funky desktop background that's unique to you and customized to say you met NinjaCat today, then just go and fire that tweet. And we won't charge you £1.
Yeah, and to be clear, the NFT is for the Ready School. Yeah, if you happen to buy any of these, they go directly to charity then. No?
Thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Covey.co